The next speaker is going to talk about exploring NFT traits through creative data viz. She usually lives on Twitter Spaces, but she has decided to come out to the public. So please welcome Outer Lumen.
Hey everyone, how's it going? You're awake? After 3 days of partying? Okay. So I'm Outer Lumen, and I do mostly live on Twitter Spaces, but today I've come out to share some really fun things. So just a little bit about me. I'm really, really into analytics, and I also adore creativity. And so I found my place in the data viz realm, and I've been exploring NFT traits, and I wanted to share some fun things with you. The best part is that I randomly picked to focus on the gold trait, and I had no idea that Doc Peace was speaking before me, all beautifully golden. And that's serendipitous as F. I usually swear a lot, but I'm going to not do it tonight, I promise. Anyway, I used to be in the research realm, then moved into the art world, and then now I'm kind of living in the metaverse, living in Twitter Spaces. I'm currently the creative director for the Hash Masks, which is a project from a while back. And I also vibe with the Mutant Cartel, and I host Mutant Spaces. So that's a little bit about me. So why did I choose to explore traits? So just briefly about the hash masks, because that was my inspiration to explore traits. And what I'm talking about here are kind of like PFP project traits, so profile picture traits for generative projects where you've got, a lot of different pieces in a collection, and those traits were generated and assembled together. So in this particular case, if you look at the hash masks on, say, OpenSea, you can click on a category called the mask and find that there are doodle traits, because there's a doodle mask. But what you can't sort by, for instance, is the fact that there are 3 different types of doodle masks. There's a face one, a symmetrical one, and an asymmetrical one. And even crazier is the fact that there are all those color variations of it. And so then kind of calls the rarity into question a little bit too, because you're thinking, well, what about that blue one at the bottom? Like, how rare is that out of everything else? And is that captured? And so I've been working on like an onboarding guide for our community for that, but it got me like really inspired to focus on the rest of the NFT collections that are out there on OpenSea floating around. So I decided to do a little bit of investigating, and I decided to scrape the OpenSea API. So we're going to get like just a little technical for a minute, but I'll steer us back out of that sea and into something that will be fun. So I decided to put together some criteria in scraping the OpenSea API for NFT collections. And so my criteria were that I wanted 721 tokens. I wanted the supply in the project, so the total number in the project to be more than 5,000, because I wanted them to be generative. And I didn't want to like get rug pulls, right? And so I set the total volume for the project greater than 0.001 ETH. Now, OpenSea we discovered quickly, and I'm just going to give a brief shout out to my partner, Divide by Zero. He's a dev in the space, and for this one I decided that I wanted to do this on my own. So him hand-holding me through writing Python has been wonderful, and I learned a lot, so I appreciate it. But when we did the 55,000 pull, we learned that OpenSea only lets you scrape the last 55,000 collections. And you know what was really wild about that? As we ran the code and we watched them, there were only, this was a month ago, there were only 4 that met my criteria out of the last 55,000 collections on OpenSea. That's insane. Just let that sink in for a minute. 55,000, only 4 met that criteria. So we needed a different approach. So I found 62 OpenSea accounts, and I dug really deep for these. I wanted like prolific collectors. The range for those in terms of creation on OpenSea was between January 18th and March 2022 and January 2018. So I wanted to capture that. And so together, there were over 150,000 tokens in those wallets collectively. So we were able to pull 1,100 NFT collections that met the criteria that I set forth. And then I used the collection API to pull the traits. And so out of those, there was 70%, 780 projects that actually had traits listed on OpenSea. And then not all of them were PFP projects. Some were like Decentral and wearables. Anyway, there's obviously some limitations to this before I go into some of this fun data viz stuff. But nevertheless, it was really fun, and it's kind of like the beginning of a really bigger rabbit hole. So of course, there might be some missing collections because I only used the wallets that I used. So I'm going to expand this by adding more as I keep going. OpenSea obviously has the project listed as the date that it added it. So something like CryptoPunks, which were made in 2017, they're there as January 2018 because that's when they were wrapped and put on the platform. There are delisted items, so those wouldn't be captured. And of course, there's collections that are in progress, like Mutants, Pixelvault, Meta Heroes, so those are still dynamic and evolving. So I told you I picked gold, and I had no idea that Doc was going to talk about gold, but I feel like I got the memo. So what was really interesting is I searched and queried the gold category, and there were 549 projects that had gold as a category. And what was kind of interesting is that mouth was the most common category for gold. That would be at the top there of that Sankey plot. And then the body was next. Art_background was like a project situation, just specific to one project. And then head, neck, ear, background, element, eyes, accessories. And then everything at the bottom that you see in the Sankey plot is just like other terms that projects have used under the gold category that are unique to their projects. And so those had like less than 100 counts. So I didn't bother listing all of those. Maybe a word cloud. So I thought, okay, well, let's look at the mouth category. Like, what are people calling these? So there were 141 projects that have a mouth category in this set. So an example of like a gold grill, which is the top one. The top mouth is gold grill out of the projects that I found. 21 projects have the gold grill traits. There's like the Alien Friend Evolution example with the gold grill. Gold tooth, not to be outdone by gold teeth, because you can't just have one. Gold grills, golden teeth, gold fangs. I thought this was really, really interesting to deep dive. I also looked at the body. There were 97 projects, the runner-up of the body. So those were a little bit like, in terms of thinking about the characters used and the linguistics used, it was a bit of an easier one, right? Gold, golden, gold chain. It wasn't kind of as diverse as the mouth trait. So there are other insights, of course, now that I scraped this data that I've been looking into that I found interesting as well. I remember minting a project, would have been maybe like a year ago. And I saw that the female traits in this project, the most rare one came up at like 1,000 something. And I thought that was really weird because I'm like, well, that sucks. Like, why don't you have that like as a rarity? And I was actually pleasantly surprised when I queried words like female, woman, girl, whatever, all these like feminine type words, just to see what projects came up, that they're actually like some of the more prominent projects do have, and this is of course limited to rarity tools with the current algorithm setting that's just like the default one. Rarity is obviously subjective depending on what exactly you're looking at. But it was cool to see that like Pixelvault's Meta Hero collection has the current one is a female character. That collection, as I mentioned, is still changing, so that might change. But Avastars, Hashmask at number 3, CryptoPunk is number 11, Apes come in at 64. I'm like, okay, I see you projects, that's cool. Because the one that I grabbed definitely didn't do that. And it's also interesting, because I'm going to deep dive this too, how traits have evolved in terms of gender for projects that just abandoned that altogether and now are mixing like, beards with long hair and abandoned using the gender terms in the traits. And I thought that was really awesome too. I was also curious to see kind of like, well, who did what first? And I know this, of course, is limited in that I don't have every single thing, and I'll be scraping even more. But I did notice that the hash masks, and I'm biased, of course, and I thought that was cool, were the first ones that had the halo followed exactly as the next project in my data by the apes, and then my effing pickle. And then, of course, fast way forward, even the moonbird still kept the halo. So it's kind of interesting to see how certain traits are copied and proliferated over time. One thing that I'm focusing now on, too, is creating a temporal data viz, so like over time, to see how traits are assigned in terms of rarity. So my goal with this is I'm working on 2 coffee table books that I think will be really fun, because if you're a degen, come on, like who doesn't want a coffee table book on traits to onboard all your friends, right? So that's where I'm at. And then of course, just like really growing the current data set and eventually just putting it up on Git so people can like check it out and play around with it as well. And down the line in September, there's going to be like an online tool that I really want to develop for using Trade Explorer, so that if you go in and you go like Google, or not Google, but search 3D glasses on the tool, then like all the projects come up that have it. There's a couple of other things, but I'm like way too early to mention them, so I'm not going to. But yeah, if you want to learn about trades or talk to me about any of that stuff, you can find me at Outer Lumen. I'm mostly on Twitter Spaces, Mondays, Fridays, most other days, but the ones I host are on Mondays and Fridays. Yeah, and my DMs are open, so that's it. I am done. Thanks so much.